Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Since it is October, I decided for this month to go with dolls that look kind of like they're in costumes. So for today's video, I decided to make a magician. Let's go ahead and get started. For this custom, I decided to go with an Ever After High Holly O'Hare body, and I will be using this dragonfly nylon long hair from dollyhair.com. Now I take my 100% pure acetone nail polish remover and a few Q-tips to remove her factory face. Next, using a pair of sharp scissors, I cut off her hair as close as I can to the scalp. After removing her head, I use a pair of pliers to pull out the remaining plugs from inside her head. In order for her skin to be less noticeable after the reroot, I paint her scalp using a matching color to the hair. I repaint her head using a pretty thin layer of this paint. I think this paint was from an oil painting set, so it turned out to be a little bit shiny and a little bit sticky. And I fixed this by using some white powdery pastels to simply powder it on to the areas that were sticky. This is the first fully rerooted doll with very long hair, and it was actually pretty easy to do, so if anybody's looking for some good dolly hair, then I definitely recommend dollyhair.com. And this color was really pretty. I already have a few other colors I'm working with, and they're going to be for my next doll custom, so keep an eye out for those. And now I'm just reattaching the head to the body. Next, taking a break from the doll, I decided to work on her outfit. For this doll, I had a vague outfit that I wanted to recreate, so I pulled out all the fabrics that I thought might work, and a lot of these were pretty much black fabrics with a little bit of pattern, some gold, some teals. I didn't use all of these, but it's a great way for me to figure out what fabrics I have and how I can use them without having to buy new fabrics. This was the page that I kind of scribbled on to see what kind of outfits I wanted. These were two inspirations I got, but I kind of mixed and matched for the final design. I decided to start with the pants, so I pulled out a pre-existing pattern that I already had and simply modified it to make a new one, which is going to be more of a straight pant. I think I've done a better description and visual aid of how I make pants in my Dylan Gardner video, so if you want to see that one for another example, feel free to check it out. And basically what I did was I sewed the top U of the two pant patterns to connect them, and then I kind of flipped them in this weird way to explain in order to get the two leg holes. This is actually the second pair of pants I made. The first one, the top part around her waist, ended up being a little bit short, so it fit kind of low on her body. So I decided to make another pair because I wanted it to fit right, and these came out pretty well, and I'm just trying them on a different doll. For her shirt, I decided to go with a pretty bold looking fabric and pattern. It is going to consist of this big ruffle on the front of her chest, and this fabric is very bold because it's very shimmery, so I thought it'd be very cute on doll scale. Next, I work on her vest, which is the same fabric as her pants because I wanted them to be kind of like a matching set, and this will go over the gold shirt. And again, here I am trying it on, and for the back I decided to add Velcro so it didn't add bulk. Now moving on to her vest, I decided to use this velvety fabric given to me by my friend Jacob. If any of you guys know him, he's from Blank Space Dolls on Instagram, and he just started a YouTube channel. So you guys should definitely go check him out. He's probably going to make amazing videos, so I'm going to leave his link to his channel in the description below. The jacket is pretty much the same pattern I use for dresses, except I just put it on basically backwards to the doll. And then for the bottom part, I just cut out this simple shape for the kind of cape look. Next, moving on to her accessories, I decided that this doll would probably wear a pair of black booties, so that's what I decided to go for. I kept them pretty simple and repainted these Monster High shoes all black. Next, for her hat, I used a thick leather fabric to make it sturdy, and what I did was I measured the circumference of her head, which was about 16 centimeters. Then I figured out the diameter, which was about 5 1/4, and then for the extending part of her hat, it was 2 centimeters that I wanted. Then I traced it onto the back side of the leather fabric, and these measurements should fit a Ever After High doll. Here are the patterns cut out. The left one is the brim of her hat, and the circle is for the top of the hat. Next, I cut out a long rectangular piece of fabric, and the top is about 17 centimeters by 5 centimeters, and this is going to wrap around the hat. So since this fabric was pretty much folded up in my fabric area, it wanted to stay flat, and it was pretty difficult for it to get the round shape, but I basically had to Fabri-Tac it down to each other and hold it in place for a while. I was still excited to use this fabric because it was one that I didn't use in my fabric swap doll challenge that I did with Jacob. If you want to see that video, feel free to check it out. After Fabri-Tac gluing the pieces together, you could still see a little bit of the white part underneath the fabric and part of the glue, so I decided to repaint it lightly using some black acrylic paint. It didn't make the fabric very hard, or it didn't stain very much on my doll's head, so I recommend doing this, maybe just doing a very light layer, and considering it is black paint, it didn't stain too much. I also customized this hat with a matching ribbon. It has a little bit of teal and gold, so I thought it matched pretty well with the whole doll's aesthetic. And I had these fancy feathers, literally what they're called, in my customizing area, and I decided to use those to add to the brim of the hat. I believe I bought these at Hobby Lobby, and the reason I bought them was because the feathers were in very varying sizes and they had these little patterns on them. For her magician wand, I used this white cake pop stick and painted the middle of it black. Finally, moving on to the face. I start by blushing the cheeks, forehead, and nose with a light, soft pink pastel. For her lips, I decided to go for a more bigger, bolder shape, and I gave her red lips because I thought this doll would be a little bit more mysterious and seductive compared to my other more lighthearted and cute dolls. I like using watercolor pencils for the lips and for other details because I like having clean, crisp lines. Next, moving on to her eyes, I did start on the right side of her face, but then I moved to the left because the left side I normally have more trouble getting an even look, so if I sketch on the left side and get the shape I want, then it's easier for me to replicate it on the right side. I also started with a light brown watercolor pencil to sketch in the eyeliner and the eyelashes, but in the end I do go back over it with a black watercolor pencil in order to give her a more darker look. I normally don't start with black because it is a very heavy color, so if I make a mistake early on, it's harder for me to fix. And now I use a pink watercolor pencil to draw in the waterline. For her eye color, I decided to go with a dark black to gray to gold kind of look. It starts off as a solid gray because I didn't want to use black quite yet, but I do like this color because it doesn't distract too much from the hair and the outfit, which is pretty much what I wanted since I think the outfit and the hair is pretty much the standing out point. And I decided to try to do a diamond shaped eye glare, but it got a little too small, so I had to go over it later on. Next, I use a white watercolor pencil to fill in the whites of her eyes and add a highlight underneath the inner corner of her eyes. I also use a brown watercolor pencil to add the crease to her eye. In order to get a very saturated eyeshadow color, I use my watercolor pencils to create a kind of emerald jade color to a tan color of eyeshadow, and I also use this emerald color for her eyebrows. I do go over her eyebrows with a black and a gray in order to darken them up because they were a little too light than I wanted. I wanted them to match a little bit more with the hair. So after a second spray of MSC, I go back and add the highlights and a little bit of the shadows, and also really saturating the colors before adding the black. As you can see here, I'm adding the white first because I've had trouble in the past where I did the black first and then I went over the white that was touching the black, and my white watercolor pencil would pick up the black and leave a few streaks on the doll's face, which was not ideal. After building up the color around the eye, I finally used my black watercolor pencil to go over the eyeliner and make it very saturated. After the second spray of MSC, I decided to only do half the face so I can show you guys kind of how saturated a face can get with proper layers of MSC. For my face ups, I normally have to do about 3 to 4 sprays. The first layer is normally the blushing and setting, foundation shapes, eye shapes, eyebrow shapes, lip shapes. The second layer is adding highlights and shadows. And the third and fourth layer is pretty much building up all that saturation and adding any last minute details. Here I'm using the black watercolor pencil to finish the top part of her eye and adding gray to the lower part of her eye. I also decided to use a darker brown watercolor pencil for the crease on her eye, and I darkened up the teal in her eyeshadow. Next, with the same black watercolor pencil, I make it very sharp so I can add the tiny eyelashes at the bottom of her eye. I normally would do pointy eyelashes, but these last few customs I found myself drawing these more triangular shaped eyelashes, which I think I like better. So this is only my second spray of MSC, and as you can see, the colors build up a lot if you apply Mr. Super Clear properly. And off camera, I finished the left side of her face, so as you can see, I just did the same process and I built up those colors. I also added a few lines to her lips to make it look like she was smiling. I decided afterwards to wet my white watercolor pencil and redo the eye shine and the eye glare. I find that my acrylic paint builds up too much, so I decided to use the watercolor pencil. With the final spray of MSC, I finally can take her out of her head wrap. I had reattached her head after the reroot because normally I don't like to squish the face once I've done the face up, but in the end I still took it off in order to do the hairstyle. I kept her hairstyle pretty simple. I braided her hair into 6 braids, and for that top piece I just twisted it really tightly into this little design and then pinned it in with a bobby pin. I thought curls would be a little bit too fancy for this girl, so I decided to go with the waves. I wish they were a little bit tighter in the end, but I can fix that down the line. Now I simply hold the curls by dunking her head into cold water and then into hot water, and I do this a few times in order for them to hold a little bit better. And after letting the hair completely dry overnight, I take off the ponytails and the bobby pin and style it. All I do is separate the braids, and for that little twisted piece at the top, I style it to the side of her face. Her outfit was a little difficult to put on, so I decided to dress her before reattaching the head, so that's why she is covered. The curl at the top of her head was a little bit more twisted than I would have wished, so all I did was pinned it to the side of her face and let the rest hang down with the rest of the braids. After reattaching her head, she is all complete and ready for final photos. I think I say this about all my dolls, but this doll is one of my favorites, I think because she is my favorite color. I love this deep emerald color, and I really love trying new things. I think the lips are especially one of my new favorite things. I normally do smaller lips, but this bigger, more mature, bolder lip is kind of growing on me a little bit. I thought this photo was really funny, so I decided to add this into the photo montage. It's kind of everything to me, but it kind of reminds me of The Greatest Showman a little bit. I think it's because of the whole suit and that very dramatic chest shirt piece. I also took a few photos of her without her jacket on just for some variety, but in the end, guys, I think this is it. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I want to say thank you for joining me and watching me create this magician. If you want to see more of my customs or more photos of this magician, feel free to follow me on Instagram. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.